And we'll go and I'll drag the victory in. And I'll say Mixamo or all takes. There's our data right there. Perfect. We got everything we need. Now, the problem is it's not defined. So the only way we're going to define the animation inside of Motionbuilder is we need to move this into a T-pose. So there's a few steps involved in this. So we have to zero out all the animations on the joints on one frame to keyframe it. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all the joints right there. And once we've done and selected all, we're going to make sure we're on frame 0 of our timeline. That's good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Properties. Under Resources, Properties, here is the rotation. So there's translation, rotation, scaling. We want the rotation. We want to zero this out. So there's all these numbers associated with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the first column here, double click it, type in 0, and then I'm going to hit the Tab key. And it's going to enter, and it's going to zero out some of that animation for me. And then I'm going to go to the next one, hit 0, and then hit the Tab key. And then that zeroed out that section. And then I'm going to go hit 0 again and hit the Tab key. So right here, X, Y, and Z in the rotation, I just put zeros right in there. And you can see what that did with the skeleton. It zeroed everything out for all the joints when I selected everything. That's what we're looking for. All right. So there is a little bit of wonkiness happening in the feet. So zeroing out these the joints in the ankles just does something a little funky. So we need to take care of that. So I'm just going to deselect out here in the viewport and then reselect them. So I'm just selecting right on that joint. And I'm just going to rotate it just slightly so it's straight. And there's no exact values for this. Just eyeball it, should be good enough. All right, that looks good. I like that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to reselect, I'm going to deselect, and then reselect all the joints right here. And then I'm going to key all these joints on that very first frame. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to hit key or the S key on your keyboard and key it. All right, that looks good. So let's define the skeleton. Hit define. And now we're going to come up here and let's doing the same process that we were doing before. I'll deselect and I'll go to the definition, double click on the hip, click on the joint, and then we'll hit the template mode, human IK, HIK, hit OK. Everything looks good except those arms again. So we put in the same values that we did last time. I select this and we just raise this up to about, on the right side, negative, what was it? Negative 108. There we go. And that's green. And then the other side over here, we're going to do a positive Z on 112. And that zeroes that out. That looks good. Once you've got that down, lock it down. This is really important. Lock that character down. Say biped. Looks good. I like it. And it's all locked down. And then now we're going to go to Edit, Definition, and then we're going to say Rename, and we'll just call this whatever this animation was. It was Victory. All right. We hit OK, and there it is. So now we've got our animation, and it's all been defined. The thing we want to do now is select all the joints again, and we're going to get rid of this T-pose. So since we put it on frame 0, again, real important that you put this on frame 0, we're going to delete that frame on frame 0. So I'm just going to click on it right up in the timeline. Just click on that, select all the joints, select that first keyframe, and make sure your cursor's there. and then just hit the delete key, and then you can see we just got rid of that T-pose, so you don't have to worry about that T-pose anymore. So that looks pretty good and ready to go. One more thing we need to do to make sure this works in story mode, if we want to use multiple animations from Mixamo and use them in story mode, and after we define them, we need to put in a control rig in it. And this is just a way of, we're just activating it in the background. So it's kind of weird and explained, but story mode needs a control rig to work properly, and we need to put this in the file. So we're going to go over to Creator Control Source, go to Control Rig, and then it's going to ask you, if you want to do FKIK. Yes, we do. And there it is. So now we've put the control rig on. Now it's going to go into a T-pose, and we're not going to see the animation. Again, we're only activating it in the background. So I'm going to go back to source. So once you've turned on the control rig and you see it in a T-pose, that's fine. Don't flip out. Go back to none for the source, and then there it is. There's the animation back. And if you go into the navigator right here and go to scene, you'll see you have the actual joints in the scene, and now you have this, whatever the animation is, control reference, and that's your control rig. So that's got to be in there too for this to work properly. Once that's done, let's save this out. So now I'm going to call this victory, and I'll just call it like defined, because it's all been calibrated and with a control rig and everything and characterized. Hit save, and there you go. Now let's use story mode now. So what I'm going to do is going to do a new scene. I'm going to come over to my asset browser where I have my folder, and I'm going to refresh that directory. So right click, refresh directory, there it is. So now I'm going to grab that Ninja rig, not the actual one that I grabbed from Mixamo, but the one I defined, drag that in, and I'll say no animation on that. There it is. And then I'm going to go to story mode over here, and I'm going to grab my victory defined. I'm going to drag that into the second part of the story window at the bottom, and then boom, automatically it should pick up. It picks up the rig, assigns the animation to it, and if we hit play, there it is, ready to go. Pretty cool. I'm going to right click in the story mode, and I'm going to make sure frame start and end so we get the whole clip, and we can hit play again. And there you are. Now, once that's done, we can add more. So I've went ahead, and it's the same process, and I did a defeated defined. So I went in there and I did the same process I did for the victory, but I already went ahead and defined this and characterized it and put a control rig on it. I'm going to take this and I'm going to drag this over to my story mode. There it is. And then I'm going to mix the two. So I'm going to click it, and then I'm going to drag one on top of the other. So you're kind of doing fading like a video clip from one to the next. And then we're just going to allow it to play. And there it is. Oh, we need to frame up the selection because it was just starting. Right click in the gray area, frame start and end, and then now we'll hit play. And there it is. There's our animations all playing together, because you have to do that pre-work of defining all the characters and the actual animations to be used in Mobu properly. And then now it's just drag and drop, and it really is cool. Now there is a little bit of a foot slide that you might notice in the animation. See how that's happening. Again, these two clips are not perfectly matched, so you can come with the eyedropper tool here, and you can try to match these two origin points better. So you can select this one here, go to the move tool, and then maybe match that the best you can right there. And sometimes that works right there. Another way you can make this work is to use the match tool. So the two clips really are anchored on one of the controls on the feet, so they match up perfectly. So what I do is I normally, find the middle of the transition, and I put the cursor right in the middle of that inside the story mode. And then I select one of the clips. I come over to this match tool that's right at the top of the story mode window. Click on that. And then from here, I'm going to use these options. I'm going to use match clip. So I'm going to be matching to the previous clip. I'm going to make sure that I'm matching at the current time. And that's where my cursor is, right there. I'm going to make sure that's turned on. And then, again, you kind of have to play with these from time to time, depending on the clips and the animation. This might not be perfect every time. You might have to do the start of the clip or between the previous clip and the selected clip. So things you kind of do have to play with these sometimes to get the result you want. And then match position. Most of the time you want transition on and rotation. Sometimes you want rotation off, depending, but this is just trial and error to see what works. And then gravity for transition and rotation, you definitely need to turn those on if you want everything to be planted onto the ground. Once you've done that, hit OK. And then now, if you play back this animation, especially if you're looking at the feet, it's more of a solid plant on that. Does a little bit better job, especially if you get a little bit further back. So, there you go. So that's how you do a little bit of matching for your character. Once that's done, you are pretty much ready to go. So you take this. We're going to go to the top of the character controls, and then we're going to bake the skeleton. So now that animation has all transferred over onto the skeleton. And then we can go to the story mode and turn this off. We're going to mute this. This is the little mute button, just to make sure that whole animation got transferred over. It looks like it did. That looks good. And then now we can get rid of this story mode track. Delete it. So I right clicked and deleted it. And then now, if you need to do some counter animation, you can now bake this onto the control rig. That should play, and now you should do some more custom animation on top of this rig, and then export that into what other program, like a game engine or Mixamo or Toolbag, or back into Maya. So it's pretty cool. All right. That's kind of the workflow for using Mixamo data inside of Motionbuilder. Talk to you guys next time.